Hi everybody, I'm Dan Ruby. I am a lifelong science educator. I'm a current school board member here in Southern Oregon. And I want to tell you a little bit about how I got here. I'm running for U.S. House of Representatives in our 2nd Congressional District. It's large, it's about 70,000 square miles, about the size of the state of Washington. It's southern, central, and eastern Oregon. And I spent about a third of my time in the car in the past 3 months talking to folks across the district. It's been a lot of fun. But I want to tell you how I got here. So I started my career teaching elementary school kids about earth and space science. And that moved into helping high school kids plug into where they thrive, whether that's through career and technical education, whether that's to 4-year university or 2-year community college or apprenticeships and internships in next generation industry. And I got recruited to be the CEO of our science museum here in Southern Oregon, jumped at the chance, and we got one of the first things we worked on under my leadership was we got some funding to do a new national exhibit on climate change, which is the largest science issue facing our globe. And how we experience that in Oregon is through our waters and our forests. One of the components of that is wildfires that are increasingly severe. As Representative Marsh pointed out, that became very real in September of 2020 with the Alameda fire. So normally, here's where I talk about how my career shifted into housing and healthcare and education related to that. But I want to actually talk about a contrast with my opponent. So Cliff Bentz has voted alongside his seatmate Marjorie Taylor Greene against projects and programs that help Oregonians here at home. He has worked against the Klamath Basin Restoration Agreement that's super crucial. There's been a lack, he didn't support our bipartisan infrastructure bill that's super needed, and Republicans have a lack of leadership on climate change. I applaud him for being a member of the Conservative Climate Caucus, but they failed to offer any meaningful legislation. We all agree that we need to do better on wildfire and water issues. We are not going to do better meaningfully unless we also acknowledge that climate change is human-caused and happening and take action on it. And from a federal level, there's a lot of action we can take on it. First, I would pick up 5 pieces of legislation forwarded by progressive colleague, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So it's recognizing the duty of the federal government to create a Green New Deal for public schools, build green infrastructure and jobs, Green New Deal for public housing, and implement a civilian climate corps for jobs and justice. We rejoined the Paris Accord, thank you, Joe Biden, but it needs to be stronger, and there's some things we can do about that from within the Paris Accord. We can focus on the how and not the what. So right now we have targets, but we don't have pathways. So building the pathways is important. Making sure, as Representative Marsh pointed out, that we need to approach adaptation and mitigation in tandem. Thank you. I see the 30-second thing. We need to better integrate conflict-affected countries if we want to do better on global climate change. And we need to look for other opportunities, so we need to enhance the role of women, indigenous populations, youth, and other traditionally excluded populations. We need to really implement climate and energy justice if we want to affect change around the globe.
Thank you much.
Oh, last thing. Reduce fossil fuels eventually to zero. Yes. That is key. Well, the first thing, as I mentioned with the last question, is mitigating climate change on the front end. We are not going to get better, again, at forests or water without doing that. But specifically, we have half the land in Oregon is public lands, a little over half. 30 million acres of public land, half of that, so 15 million acres, is federal land. We need to protect our federal lands. And I mean, if you've seen Project 2025, the plan is to get rid of the EPA and defang the Forest Service, the BLM, Fish and Wildlife. That's the opposite of protecting our federal lands. On our federal lands, we can be smarter about forest management. So we can do things like intentional burning of underbrush that preserves the old growth crowns. We can do better at planting instead of this clear cutting and then Doug fir growing up all the same age. It's just a fire hazard. And yeah, we can do better forest management based on updated science. Really, the BLM and Forest Service is working off science that's decades old. And we have smarter, newer science, and the way that we access that is working inclusively with partners, including our tribes. As many of you know, Representative Bentz is a water lawyer and is chair of the subcommittee on water and natural resources. I just sat in this morning on their field hearing on water in Central Oregon, and we both agreed that we need to do better and that we need to support local agreements. However, that's hard to hear when he did not support Great Walton before him, and he did not support the Klamath Basin Restoration Agreement. I would support those efforts. He came in with, just this past April, with his bill that would overwrite that. That's the opposite of supporting local agreements that took decades to put into place. He opposes it because he's against dam removal. I am very much for dam removal. My water policy advisor is Craig Tucker from the Yurok tribe. My fish advisor is the lead scientist on the Klamath Dam Removal Project. I very much believe that we need salmon back up to where they belong, and you don't get there without removing dams. In contrast, my top 3 issues are housing, health, and education. Mr. Bentz's top 3 issues are stopping dam removal on the Snake River in Washington and Idaho, and that train already left the station. The thing is now what? I'm in contrast with that. I think we should remove dams. Number 2, he wants to delist the wolves as an endangered species, which is something that affects ranchers, but is not on the top 9 priority list, so that's a contrast. So my top 3 issues are homes we can afford, better access to mental health care, and education opportunities. But these are related to climate, and the reason I got into this work is because of climate stuff, indirectly. So after the Alameda fire, I shifted to working for a fire rebuilding nonprofit called Fire Resiliency Collective. And then that turned into working for a federally qualified health center on housing, transitional housing with health and human services for wildfire survivors. And I accepted that job because my then boss, a wonderful person named Christine Winters, framed it as helping climate refugees. She said, the future of healthcare is changing because of climate. It's related to climate. It affects it's the biggest driver for health, and our work is serving climate refugees. And I said, I'm on board, that's great. So they are all related. Housing, as Representative Marsh pointed out, we lost 2,400 homes overnight, and that directly affects our housing issues here in Southern Oregon. Climate change does. The health issues that we face at a federally qualified health center because of climate change are huge and growing when we see it's deadly. We are seeing that now in Florida, that it really affects people's well-being. So they are related. And the education part is that it's the number 1 thing we need to be educating kids on with as far as science goes. Yeah, I'm very pro dam removal. We need salmon back up where they used to be. Our economies have depended on our fisheries for thousands of years, and we need those fish back. So I'm pro dam removal. I guess I can go a little bit longer on that. It's part of a new vision for water security. Like Richard said, it's related to our forests, it's related to our wildlife. Water is fundamental to life, literally. Everybody knows that water literally is fundamental to life. And I think that we need to really have a comprehensive plan for healthy waterways that dam removal is central to. Yeah. So part of the reason that I ran is because as I was doing work in housing, I came across a couple barriers in my column of government from myself up to the president. So we have a great school board, we have a great city council, we have a not great county commission, and we have a great state rep in Pam Marsh, and we have great senators at the federal level, and we have a not great federal U.S. representative, and then great above that. And so to Denise's point, one of the things, I'm going to wrap this back around, but I appreciate Representative Marsh talking about the sensitivity to dam removal. It's a carrot and stick thing where we need to help folks. A lot of those are dams that are no longer producing as much as they were. They're outdated, they're old, and they weren't built with fish passage really in mind as well as we would do now. So helping folks adapt really funding infrastructure. So funding infrastructure so we can diversify at a community level, the consumer-owned utilities, into solar and wind and new hydro that accounts for fish passage. And we aren't going to do that unless we fund it at the county level. So really funding back down from the federal down to the county level to make sure that this stuff can actually be implemented is something that would be important to me. So between the Declaration and the Constitution, we lost the right to happiness part, but I do think that we have the right to be healthy and whole. And that's not captured adequately. I wouldn't oppose a constitutional amendment, but I echo Representative Marsh in that it seems like it's potentially a lot of effort that could be invested into action instead. And so I would be, I think I have a similar position in that I would support it and not want to let it divert away from doing the work. I'm always likewise leery when we get caught up in letting perfect be the enemy of good, and I'd rather do the work and have it be imperfect and complex and messy and iterative and fail forward, fail fast, fail often, than spend a lot of time in trying to perfect language. It's a lot of work to do constitutional amendments. I think there are two major barriers to greening the Rogue Valley. One is economic, and thankfully we have folks like Representative Marsh that are doing things like funding OHA to do the low-hanging fruit of helping people weatherize and helping our vulnerable populations do that stuff. So, but the money thing is huge, and we are not going to get to more municipal scale, smarter, more forward-thinking utilities without heavy investment in it. So I think that needs to come down from the federal and state levels. The other big barrier is with our commissioners, really honestly, is that we have had commissioners that are very obstructive to progress, and hearing that story about those youth who it's very near and dear to me being made fun of is just indicative of that. Great, thank you. So I want to bring a new vision for security, climate security. Climate change is the biggest threat facing global security. It's not just a national security issue, it's a global security issue. And if we want a stable, sustainable future, we need to address it head on with drastic action. The Paris Accords are not enough. We're seeing that. We're seeing that in action in Florida right now. We are seeing warming surpassing what we anticipated, and we're not doing enough to mitigate it. So my vision for climate security includes comprehensive water and in our area, comprehensive water and forest management plans. It includes a holistic approach. We've talked about that. Decisive climate action. Commitment to investing in technology and innovation. We've talked about that, including jobs in a new Green Deal, and ecosystem restoration. We need to commit to that. My commitment is to community engagement, so that's inclusive policy development. I'm committed to involving all stakeholders, local governments, farmers, environmental groups, tribes, residents in the process to make sure that our solutions are equitable and effective. And transparency and accountability. So our community deserves transparency and accountability from its representatives, and I will ensure and commit to regular updates and open dialogues about our progress and challenges in achieving this security.
Great, thank you, Mark.